What if the conversations we've been told to avoid are the ones we need the most? What if we have become so afraid of offending people that we've stopped asking better questions?
Because growth doesn't come from staying comfortable. It comes from questioning assumptions, challenging ideas, and being willing to hear perspectives that aren't your own.
Some conversations will make you uncomfortable. Some will challenge what you believe. Some might even change your mind.
Listen, we're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to ask better questions, to explore different perspectives, and to have the conversations most people avoid.
No scripts, no echo chambers, no sugarcoating. Just honest conversations about leadership, relationships, business, health, money, culture, and what it really means to live well in a complicated world.
And hey, you don't have to agree with everything you hear, but if every episode leaves you thinking long after it's over, we've done our job.
You're listening to Let's Not Sugarcoat It. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Not Sugarcoat It. Today's question is, what if the best relationship in your life hasn't happened yet? Not because you haven't met the right person, but because you weren't a version of yourself who could create it. Today's guest believes that for many people, love doesn't peak in their 20s or 30s. It begins after 40, when life has humbled you, challenged you, and forced you to become more honest about what you need and what you're not longer willing to accept. Sandy Weiner is the founder of First Date, a relationship coach and podcast host who's helping thousands of people navigate dating, communication, boundaries, and intimacy in the second half of life. Today, we're asking the questions that matter. Why do we keep repeating the same relationship patterns? Can you really reinvent your love life after 40? And is the greatest obstacle to finding love someone else or ourselves? Welcome, Sandy, to the show.
Well, thank you. Great to be here.
So tell us a little bit, most of our viewers are women, entrepreneurs, over 40. We do have, because now we have a man on the show, we are attracting the second part of most relationships is we are dealing with men, and we're quite different. And men and women do go through midlife a little bit differently. Hormonally, our needs change, our wants change. We've lived through half of our lives, most of us, 40, I'm 46. So maybe I'll live to 100. I don't know. So maybe I'm not midlifing just yet. But things change, relationships change, and our needs change. And we go through a lot of breakups around this stage of our lives. Can you tell us a little bit why?
Yeah, they call it gray divorce when people are probably closer to 50. It's a very popular time to get divorced, and there are lots of reasons why. I think that when we get married, especially if we're young, when we get married, there's a trend towards getting married later in life today. But I think in our generation, people were getting married in their 20s, late 20s. By the time you're in your 40s and you've had a few kids, maybe your needs change, and if your relationship hasn't changed with you, then you start to grow apart. And most of us don't have relationship skills built into us. Even if we go to therapy, it often doesn't work because we probably married the wrong person. Often. I know that I went into marriage without a lot of good education about what makes for a good relationship. I didn't realize how important conflict resolution was, for example, and having the ability to work through conflict. That was a huge thing that got in the way of our relationship. And I think for a lot of people, they end up just becoming two strangers in the same house. And in my experience also, women are, maybe their kids are starting to get older or they've grown. Women are often like, well, what's next for me? I'm ready to go and explore my next act. And many men are just like, I'm tired. I've been working my whole life and now I'm sort of amping down instead of amping up. So we're going in separate directions. And I think that's a big part of the divide in my experience.
That's interesting. I've not heard of that kind of like in that context before. We talk a lot about people growing apart for, different like needs changing. Maybe just one person is on a growth and development path. They're, learning more about themselves where the other person isn't, but not in the woman kind of entering into as you put it, a second act where they're wanting to amp up and the man's moving into a different act where they're amping down. And so I guess in those situations, are they Like, is that usually it? Like, is that the sign and the signal? And it's like, oh, okay, this is why we need to kind of separate? Or is there a way to kind of, harmonize that situation before, I guess, it turns into some form of tension and conflict that results in the relationship ending?
Well, it's complex when relationships end. It's certainly not one thing. It's many things. It's many small things that don't get resolved. And then all of a sudden it's a big thing and you're like, where did that come from? And I think that both, you mentioned the growth path. I think that the happiest, most successful relationships are two people who are on a growth path, because relationships they're growing. They're growing things. They're living things. You can't just be a crock pot in a relationship. It's like fix it and forget it, right? You've got to tend to it. And if one person's doing all the tending and the other one is just leaning back or going off and doing their own things, I mean, I got to a point where I was spending a lot of time away from my relationship because my relationship was painful. And so I belonged to the PTA and I do the dance class at night. And my husband would come home from work and I'd leave the house. And a friend of mine said to me, you're punishing your children. It's not just about your husband. You're punishing your children. You're leaving the house when the minute he walks in. It's not the greatest thing for your entire family. It's not just about, I'm doing this to save my own sanity. And I tried a million different things, but honestly, this started happening from almost the beginning. And I stayed 23 years because I don't give up quickly on things. I also didn't know what a true red flag was. And I think that we need to identify what is a red flag that can be worked on. Maybe it's an opportunity for growth. And what's a red flag that is actually a sign that your relationship is in big trouble? And I think conflict styles, for example, somebody who has a growth mindset is going to be open to learning how to resolve conflict. They're going to get less defensive. They're going to stay in the room instead of walking away. They're going to learn how to self-soothe. They're going to learn how to communicate more effectively because the relationship matters, not just self-protection, not just I'm going to just go into my old style of how do I deal with hard things, is to retreat, shut down, yell, whatever the pattern is. It's important to look at these things because they don't just show up in our relationships with our spouse. They show up in all of our relationships. Anything that's important in our lives, it shows up with our kids, shows up with friends, And so I think that it's a lot of small things, but a lot of times relationships get stronger when kids leave the house, when there's an empty nest, because parents didn't have time for each other. So it really depends on the willingness to grow together. I think that's so key.
Mm-hmm. And going back to your comment about women wanting their second act and amping up their lives and men wanting to rest. Quick question here. If that was the case for majority, why do men tend to go for much younger women who are in their, prime, and women tend to go for younger men when they're splitting in their 40s? Is it because, so we're in our second act, we're wanting to do the things, we're wanting to live, and you're saying that the man wanting to ramp down. But what I've seen from those around us, and just around us, is that people tend to go for younger people.
Yeah, both people go for younger people, right? So there's different reasons. I mean, I'm just going to give you my thoughts on this because I don't know every person who's going for younger people. But in my experience, the men who go for much younger women are often men who are ego-driven. They like the look and the feel of somebody who's younger, and it makes them feel younger and it makes them feel vibrant because maybe they've lost some of their vibrancy and maybe they're having trouble in the bedroom and this younger woman is going to make them feel more manly. I don't know. I've seen to me, it's a lot of ego stuff because men who are looking for an intellectual match for somebody who's in a similar lifestyle, which is to me, the more grounded, more mature men who are not just looking for somebody who's going to make them look good or feel good, those men often go for women the same age. When it comes to women looking for younger men, and that's often because the men of their age are tired and they're not very interesting if they haven't done work on themselves, if they if they're like, let's say they're retired and they're not doing anything with their lives, they're boring. And if you're a vibrant woman and you want to be with somebody who's got life to them, you're probably going to go for somebody who's a little younger. I think age, it is a number. It is not 100% true that older people have less vibe. It's not 100% true that younger people are vibrant. I mean, I know plenty of people who are in their 40s who look like they're half dead. I just think it's a matter of how you live your life. And if you truly know what is compatibility and what is chemistry for you, you're going to go for someone who's beyond that checklist of, I have to be with somebody who's this tall and who's this age and lives 5 miles from my house. And those things don't matter in the long run. If you're really looking for a healthy, happy relationship, you're going to look beyond all of the things that we see out there in the world.
Babe?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean...
Male perspective, he's like...
I definitely think that ego and just not having, probably maybe on both ends, I think, but maybe more common for men, I can only speak on behalf of men, is you can be in your 40s, but still be kind of like emotionally immature. And so when you have that emotional immaturity, you don't have a good sense of like who you are and what makes you you. And because of that, then you're just going out and looking for somebody who's going to make you feel good about yourself, which is just going to get you into a situation likely down the road where you're just going to be unhappy at some point, because once the novelty of any new relationship wears off, you're left with having to deal with yourself still, right? That distraction is no longer there. And so, yeah, I think even if a relationship, long-term relationship doesn't work out and you find yourself, in your 40s or later in life, it's really important to, I guess, kind of do, as we like to say, like the work, but focus on how do I better myself so that this way I find another relationship, regardless of age, that's really going to, complement not just you, but like your values and the life that you want to live and all those things. Like Bella and I, every year, we get really clear on our wants, for as ourselves individually, as parents, as husband, wife, and then as well, because we run a business together for our business. And then that helps us kind of set that North Star, so to speak. But I think a lot of people never go through that. Like you mentioned at the beginning, how most people don't really have relationship skills. And so we find somebody that makes us feel good about ourselves, and then we just kind of eventually put it on autopilot. Like at the beginning of a relationship, we get all excited about building a family, building a life, buying a house, doing all these things. And then once you start accomplishing those, we don't do a good job of continuing to set new goals and dreams and aspirations for ourselves. And then next thing you know, you fall into what we call maintenance mode, just like everything. And like, I love how you said that a relationship is like a living thing, because it is. And everything in nature is either growing or dying. And so the reality is that when you're in maintenance mode, you're just prolonging what the inevitable piece, which is going to be kind of that eventual decay of the relationship, that lack of connection and stuff like that, because you're focusing on your career, or you're wanting to, just, I guess, avoid the fact that that's where you are. And it's uncomfortable at some point to go, hey, I'm unhappy. Because usually when you say I'm unhappy, the other person immediately thinks, oh, you're unhappy, with me and all the things that I do, whether it's you're in a more traditional style relationship where it's one partner's kind of the breadwinner and the other partner's the home taker, or a newer kind of way of looking at relationships where everybody's, working, but then that resentment builds. And so, it's important to talk and communicate.
Water the relationship throughout the years and tend to it. Grass isn't greener always, on the other side. It's how you water your lawn and how on this side, you'll see how green it can be. Or however we want to put that, my Ponglish.
Whatever type of metaphor.
Whatever metaphor will stick to you, right? So how much of dating after 40 is really about healing your relationship within yourself, do you think?
100%.
Yeah.
That's the starting point. If you want to do better, if you want to have a healthy relationship, it starts with you. Date yourself first and take all the lessons learned from relationships. Unfortunately, a lot of people will leave a marriage or a long-term relationship and just point the finger at the other person and say, It didn't work because I was married to a person who was a narcissist or she was hysterical, crazy, bipolar. There's so much of that out there. And I always say, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Did the narcissist husband make her bipolar? Did the bipolar wife make him a narcissist? Or let's get rid of all these labels and just look at ourselves and say, okay, I didn't do well with somebody who was very self-centered, who really couldn't pay attention to me. The next relationship, or I did it. I did too much in the relationship. I overperformed. I overproduced because they weren't putting in enough. So I did too much. And then I got resentful. You mentioned resentmently. And that builds when you're not communicating clearly, when you're not setting limits, when you're not doing all the things that really help a relationship. So I would suggest if somebody goes on a date, not to say, why did your relationship end or whose fault was it? People love to say, were you the one who ended it? It's irrelevant. If you ended it or they ended it, it doesn't mean anything. What means something is what did you learn from it? What did you learn from your last relationship? Or you might ask, is there something that was missing in the last relationship that you're hoping to find now? And often people will be able to answer that, that sometimes they'll say nothing, because they really are totally clueless. Sometimes they'll say, I'm looking for somebody who I don't have to walk on eggshells with. Okay, so how's your communication style? Let me know. I want to know. Are you direct? Do you keep things in? And you find those things out over time. Yeah, and there's also a way to ask if you want. If your ex was here with us on a date, what would they say was the reason the relationship ended? And would you agree with them? So you're kind of asking the question in a sort of sideways way where you want to see if they really have any awareness as to what their part was and whether their ex saw things differently from the way you saw it. So when I work with a client, we start with a lot of assessments. We do a long discovery process of what are the patterns that happened in past relationships? What have you repeated? What values are important to you? And are you paying attention to them? What are your must-haves, your deal breakers? Do you even know what they are? Are you completely off on that? And we take that and we take their attachment style and we take how they beat themselves up, like all the things that are important in your personality. And we start the healing, So if they have regrets about, I wish I spoke up more in the past, or I have trouble trusting. Well, tell me more about that. I trusted this person and they betrayed me. Well, let's back up a little bit. Why did you trust them? What made you trust them? And often we trust people without any kind of time that goes by, without seeing who they really are. And we just trust blindly. People sleep with each other too quickly so that they can't think straight. So we look at the patterns and then we just work on the areas of growth. And it's amazing the relationships that happen later in life because you have that awareness, because you've done the work.
Yeah, the dating yourself piece, as you put it, is important, because otherwise you can find yourself from leaving one relationship that maybe was toxic for certain reasons. And then if all you do is look at that and go, I need to find myself the opposite of that. And then you find the opposite of that, you could find yourself in another relationship that's toxic in a different way, because, you've gone from, a man or a woman who's, maybe very, very, direct and aggressive and so on. And you're like, okay, that was not for me. And then you end up with someone who is the opposite, and they're not what you're looking for either. And then either way, you're not happy because you haven't really looked inward to say, okay, I need to get to know myself first. And not only are the parts of myself that I like, but what are the parts of myself that I don't like that I need to work on so that I can attract that right person.
Yeah. So I was talking to a client this morning who went from never having her needs met in relationships, both with her husband and with a partner after that she was with for a long time. And of course, tracing it back to childhood, there are patterns that get repeated because it wasn't safe for her to express needs in childhood. So she suppressed a lot. And she did the work, found a new partner, and something came up, and that was a raw spot for her where her needs were not met, but he's going through a hard time. Now, this guy has shown her that he is securely attached, that he is a great communicator. He can handle conflict. She brings something up. He accepts it. He doesn't fight her. But these things are going to keep coming up. It's how we deal with them. So one of the things I like to help people with is to interrogate the truth of your thoughts. So we we look at, is this really true? Is it true that because he didn't answer my text in a few hours, which is totally not like him, that he doesn't care about me, that he's seeing somebody else, that, that he's going to dump me, whatever your story is that you start to spin, is this true? Now, you might think it's true in the moment, but ask yourself again, is this without a doubt true? This is the Byron Katie method that I just love because it's so simple. So without a doubt, no, I can't say that it's 100% true. Okay, so who do you become when you believe that thought? Well, I become an anxious mess and I spin stories in my head. Okay, who would you be without that thought? Oh, I'd be really calm, really secure. I'd be able to speak up. I'd be able to talk about these things. Okay, now I can breathe again and now I can have this conversation. So learning how to process our emotions, learning how to do things differently. It's not just about finding the right partner. It's about being the right partner.
I feel like energy is huge in relationships too. I always say to clients, friends, who do you feel yourself to be energetically with that person? Do you feel like you can be open and honest? Or are you hiding parts of yourselves? Do you have to walk on eggshells? If those are things that come up, then you need to question, why are you still in this relationship? And why are you not looking at what parts of you need to heal first so that you start inviting the right type of energy and right type of person into? But it has to be you first. Energetically, you need to be open to receive the person that is meant for you. But we do tend to go for the opposites of when we leave a relationship at some point, but not look at the root causes. We're just replacing one thing for another. And the patterns show up as we continue in the new relationships.
Yeah. And you bring up a really good point about checking in with yourself. What part of you is accessed in this relationship? What part of you comes out? And how do you feel in your body when you're with that person? When I work with clients, I have them do an assessment after every date. I have them ask themselves these types of questions because what we normally do after a date is we say, it was okay. We had good conversation. They have a nice car. They were good looking. It's stuff that then we're confused. Or they're really nice, but I'm not sure if I should go out with them again. But if you check it with yourself and you say, how did I feel during the date? Was my body tense? Was I relaxed? Did I laugh? Did I feel attractive in their presence? Did they get curious about me? Am I still curious about something with them? I mean, that to me is always the defining question. When I would go on a date, and I don't have any questions for them because I don't really care. I don't care about them. I mean, or they just talk about themselves. So there's not really a whole lot to be asking here. But also interrupt people who talk about themselves nonstop. It's how do you get to know each other? Maybe it's nervousness. Maybe it's not that they're selfish because we tend to write people off too quickly too. But the deeper thing about what you're talking about, Bella, is that so many people don't even see that it's an unhealthy attachment because it's familiar. So if you grew up with somebody who was cold, you're going to keep attaching to cold people, hoping to make them warmer and get the love you never got. And until you do that work, you're just going to repeat these patterns and go, why do I keep attracting these people? What's wrong with all the people out there? They're all problematic. That's not the story.
Yeah. So do you think loneliness causes people to settle in relationships that they know they're not right? Because after a certain age, you've done let's say you have children, your marriage, and you're doing the healing, but there comes a point where you start feeling lonely because you've had a life with a partner. Do you think that people settle and just say, okay, whatever, it is what it is. I just don't want to be lonely.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes people just don't know how to be alone, which is something I highly recommend. Getting used to your own company. That's part of the date yourself. It's build a life that you love, that somebody would be happy to join you in, and get used to being alone. Being alone and being lonely are very different. And a lot of people really struggle with being alone, especially if you've been in a partnership. And I've had clients who feel shameful to go to an event alone. They are used to having a partner, so they have been dating a lot so that they'll have a partner to go to the event with. And I'm like, get used to going to events alone too. That could be fun. And you don't need a partner just to fill a void. That's the worst reason to have a partner. It's dating from scarcity rather than abundance. And so if you're dating from scarcity, you're going to settle for less. You're going to overlook red flags. You're going to not care if their person's not treating you well because you have somebody. And a lot of people stay in those relationships forever. And my son has a friend whose father died and his mother got into a relationship really quickly. He's fairly emotionally abusive. Terrible relationship for their mother, but she did not want to be alone. And it's hard for her and it's hard for the kids, but she will not leave him. So it happens. But if you do the work, just don't accept somebody just to fill a space. Fill your own space and be okay being alone. That's my advice.
How would somebody go about doing that if we've got someone listening to this right now and this is resonating with them? They have this fear of being alone. And what would you say to them as like, what would be a first step that they could take?
First of all, find activities that maybe you don't even know you like yet. And there are meetup groups in the United States. I don't know if Canada has them or other countries, but meetup.com is a fabulous resource that has tons and tons of groups that meet everywhere. So it could be a group of people who meet who like to do pickleball or like movies or like going to a museum or take yourself out on a date. I recommend that people go to a restaurant by yourself, go on dates weekly, go on solo dates, and do the things that you love that you would want to have a partner to do with you. You meet the most incredible people when you're alone. And so if it's, I wanted to go on a hike, maybe you look up where there's some great hikes nearby. And a lot of times, if they're coming out of a marriage, you may have put a lot of things on the back burner. And that's actually why I got into coaching, was because I put that on the back burner. I was a psych major in college, psych and art. And then I was doing art therapy for a while. Then I put that on the back burner. Then I became an artist. I worked with my husband in comedy and wrote comedy, worked on TV shows together. But I started to put my needs on the back burner and focused on the family, focused on everybody else. And so coming out, I was like, I love helping people. So I'm going to go back to school and take courses in life coaching. And that became an incredible journey for me. I met people in school doing life coaching certification, and I've met people in online communities. I think that there's so many ways that we can get out and meet people and explore cooking, anything that may be a hobby that you have put off or not even tried. But go, like if you're afraid to go to a restaurant by yourself, sit at the bar, have your meal at the bar. It's a little bit less freaky and a little scary, and if you're there to meet people, then don't plug your phone into your ears. Like really bring a book, talk to other people. It's amazing what happens when you just start making conversation with strangers. And then at home, again, like if you have hobbies that you can do at home, reading, I had put off reading for a long time. I went to the library, got books, started a book club. I mean, there's just so much that's available that people can do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the fear of being alone is greater than the fear of being unhappy? And that's why people get into relationships so quickly?
I'm not sure. I think the fear of being alone or the fear of being in a bad relationship, I compare those two. I think the fear of being in a bad relationship keeps people alone. Fear of being unhappy. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people numb themselves because they don't want to be alone with themselves. They don't want to be in relationships that take work, so they just stay isolated. There's a lot of reasons why people stay alone or get into bad relationships, but it's very individual, I think.
Yeah. I had to do some work on myself because I discovered that even though I was constantly surrounded by people, I was in a relationship, I still felt lonely. And I filled my time within my relationship of doing the extra things, the going out, the being in community, filling my time to do absolutely everything, just not to feel alone, even though I was in relationship. So that's why I asked the question, because it wasn't that I was unhappy. I was lonely.
You were lonely in your relationship?
I was lonely in my relationship with my husband. I mean, we worked it through, and that wasn't something I discovered until after I started working on myself, and when myself went to therapy, and then we did couples therapy and so on and so forth. But it wanted to put that in the forefront, that although it looked as a happy marriage and a happy life, and we were active and doing all the things, I still felt lonely because my needs were not being met. Like you said, you put a lot of stuff on the back burner. And as women, we tend to do that, especially when we have children, is to now focus on family and everybody else around us. Sometimes our careers are put on hold. And then you start losing yourself. And that's when that loneliness comes in, because there's a hole and a void that you can't fill with more things to do and stuff. So that's why I wanted to put that in, because we talk about loneliness as being just alone by yourself, but you can be very lonely with a ton of people around you.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think that's why, again, pointing back to date yourself first, there's a spiritual component to happiness. It's being able to give yourself joy. It's being able to appreciate your own company, see the good in things. Like I have a friend who was heading off to go to a workshop. She's a printmaker, and she was going to this amazing workshop. It was 6 hours away, and she gets in her car, and her car lights up all the bad, it's bad. You got to go turn around and go home, get the car checked out. So her husband's car was working. Okay. So they get in his car, and he says, I'll go with you on this trip. So it was supposed to be her time alone on this fabulous trip where she was going to get all this incredible knowledge about printmaking. Her husband's car also has problems. They turn around. She's texting me, I'm on my way home again. I don't know what's going to happen. So she called me when she got home. Her husband's car was in the shop. And I said, what do you think is the hidden meaning behind, or the hidden message behind what's going on today? And she goes, I didn't think about that. And, there were a lot of things, like if you can see expansively, her husband wouldn't have come on the trip with her. She would have gone off alone. The trip was delayed. She could have been so pissed off. She could have rented a car and not taken him. This could have ended many different ways, but because she knows how to process things, she saw the gift in her husband coming with her. She saw the positives, even though it was frustrating, she didn't let it ruin her time, and she's having a fabulous trip now. But you could easily take that and say, why do bad things happen to me? What is wrong with the world? The universe is out to get me. And when you do that inner work and you have that ability to process, you make your own happiness.
Do you think trust can be rebuilt? And I'm not talking about, if there was cheating or boundaries crossed within a relationship and then you leave the relationship. A lot of women I know have trust issues. Do you think when you go through that type of trauma where you had a partner and they cheated on you, that you can rebuild trust fully?
It takes time. And it also takes knowledge of yourself and how the betrayal happened, whatever betrayal it was. So perhaps there were fractures in the relationship that everybody was ignoring and nobody was really paying attention. And so the person cheated. Now, the cheating part was not the right thing to do, but you also played a part in staying in a relationship, in not speaking up, in tolerating bad behaviors, whatever it was. That's the part that we can repair for ourselves. We can't control other people, but we can also realize what we need to be able to trust someone again. And so maybe we need to build trust really slowly, and we need to be able to articulate that in a new partnership or a new dating situation, to be able to say, hey, listen, I really like you a lot. And I know that there's a part of me that would go and sleep with you right now, but I'm not going to do that because that's never worked out well for me. And I have to build trust slowly. So if you're willing to come along with me on this journey and we'll see where it goes, I'd love to continue seeing you. Like being able to articulate what it is that we're struggling with. So the other person knows, hey, I'm not some neurotic person. I'm a person who's working on something that's a little raw for me. I think that that goes a long way in not expecting the other person to heal you, to say, I'm working on this. I'm aware of this, and I don't just jump in, I need to build slowly.
And then what is the most underrated green flag? I feel like there's this trend going on, the word love bombing, right? Red flag. I'm like, cannot that be a green flag?
Words without actions are red flag. So I've had men who told me I was the one on the first date. Okay. Was it a red flag? Yeah, but he wasn't love bombing me. He truly felt I was the one, and he continued to see me. It wasn't just a line. He fell into relationships quickly. He was not the one for me, but he's been married like 4 times, so that's his style. Well, not necessarily. So I've had people on my podcast who've been married multiple times, like 7, 8 times. Like really, people would look at them as a walking red flag. And they had to learn how to not be lonely. That was one of the things that they had to work on, was how do I not be in a relationship and be okay? But it wasn't because they were bad people. It was their attachment style. They liked being in relationships. They had a hard time being alone. And this one person was in a relationship where the guy said, listen, I have a life. I need you to have a life. And we can't just be attached at the hip. Like, you have to have your own separate life. So to me, that's a green flag. Somebody, first of all, who can work through issues with you, who doesn't walk away at the first sign of conflict. Another underrated green flag is not somebody who's been in therapy, but somebody who's willing to work things out. You can be in therapy and have not healed, and you can have no therapy and be very self-aware and be very willing. So to me, willingness is a huge green flag. And I think people don't give enough credit to people who are willing to talk things out, who are willing to be vulnerable.
When you talk about willingness, is it ever too late in life to reinvent yourself? We talk a lot about doing the work, or to talk about doing the work as some version of, bettering yourself, kind of reinventing yourself. And then maybe a 2-part question. Is it ever too late? But maybe what would be your definition of reinventing?
There's a lot of questions in there. So
ask the first one.
It's never too late to start again, to reinvent yourself. I believe in the possibility of change. If you really want to change something in your life, go for it. If you have the energy to do it, I think I have several more lives in me. I've reinvented myself about 85 times already. And the second question was what again?
What would be your definition of reinventing?
So reinventing can be, I've decided to switch careers. I've decided to move to a new city. I've decided to be I wanted to be a digital nomad for a while. Somebody offered to rent my house, and I was like, they wanted to rent it for a year. And I thought, can I do my podcast in an RV and just travel the country? I had never done anything like that. Solo travel could be a reinvention, like taking time off and going and living someplace for 3 months, 6 months, a year, moving to a new country. There's so many ways that we reinvent ourselves that don't involve plastic surgery or GLP-1s.
What about from a core belief standpoint? Because I know when we have these conversations sometimes around growth and development, and even when we have conversations with couples around even trust, sometimes there's this sense of there's one camp, I think, where people are like, oh yeah, people can completely go through a transformation where they can adopt kind of new core beliefs, a new identity, shed their past. And then there's another camp that's like, no, people are who they are. They might be able to kind of change, careers, reinvent themselves, where they're a digital nomad or something like that, but they're still generally, who they are. What's your stance on that, Sandy?
Well, I don't think I'd be a coach if I believe that people can't change, that they have to want to. And it can be hard, really hard. So I'm thinking of one client who grew up in a really awful home. She was in recovery when I met her. So she struggled a lot internally. She had never been in a long-term relationship, especially not a healthy relationship. And she was in her late 60s when she came to me. So some people would say, you're done. You're cooked, you're done. There's no way say you can have what you want, but she really wanted to be in a healthy relationship and she wanted to get married. And we worked together on a lot of her limiting beliefs, a lot of her tendencies, people pleasing, giving more than she received, not asking for what she wanted. There were skills that she could be taught. And that's what I look at. It's, yes, your mindset is super important, but it shifts when you start practicing and behaving differently. So it's a combination. And after a lot of not good dates, she met an amazing man who really appreciated who she had become because she had done all this work on herself. And they're talking marriage. They're talking about moving in together now. And she's 71. So I have had so many amazing stories of people. That's why I wrote my third book called Love at Last. It's about people who found love later in life. And some of them were in their 50s, 60s, 70s, beyond, who had never been married, had really almost given up on on having healthy relationships. And so it's not just luck. It's doing this inner work. It's changing your mindset. It's practicing new skills and not giving up hope. Just being open to the possibility of somebody being out there. But you do become more discerning when you are more aware. And that narrows the pool of people that you would want to be with. But that's okay, because you don't want to be with people who are not a good fit anymore. You're not going to be lonely when you're alone. You have built this life for yourself. And yes, you want partnership because it is a core need for us to be in community and to be with others and to have intimacy and all of the good things in a good relationship. But if you do this work, I do believe in the possibility of change and growth and having amazing things happen.
I feel like the dating scene has changed so much over the last 20 years. I mean, my husband and I have been together for 21 years, and how we met and the pool of people that we had access to is so much smaller than what the access is right now with online dating and the swipe right culture and constantly being tempted to find something better because we have access to that. So we don't focus on that one person because there's that temptation that there is someone else there if this person is not meeting this one particular need. How do you maneuver this dating culture as a coach right now? For people older than, like after 40, they can get on online dating and so on and so forth, but we're just programmed differently than the generations that are coming behind us. I'm worried for my children and my girls on how relationships are being built and how this discard culture, I feel like it is right now. It's like, oh, well, you pissed me off, so next I'll ghost you, all of that. So how do you maneuver your clients through that? Like, how do you weed it out?
Yeah, that's a big question. It's a good question. There is the paradox of choice, like you mentioned, having so much choice that you just dispose of everyone. Like, oh, there'll be somebody better coming along. But you know what? When I was in my 20s and I lived in Manhattan and I was part of a community, I had the same paradox of choice. I felt like people were looking over my head at the person behind me all the time. Like we would all kind of congregate, all the single people out on the street. And it was always like, who's blonder, taller, shorter, thinner, whatever. So I think there's always been some level of that. Now it's worse than ever, but it's also because we communicate by text. And so what I help my clients with is, first of all, showing up as your best self. Like, you don't want people to breadcrumb you or ghost you. Behave better. Do better yourself. Communicate better. Get off text as soon as possible. If you have exchanged a few texts with somebody and you want to see if there's any potential, suggest you meet for coffee. Women, stop being passive, waiting for men to do everything. There's so many women who are like, men have to chase me. We're not living in the 1920s. It's like, yes, you don't want to do everything, but give men the green light that it's okay for them to come over and ask you out, get on a call, do the things that we used to do back in the day when we weren't all disposing of each other, and communicate better. Communicate that you care about somebody, that you like them, that you want to get to know them better. It's not saying I want to marry you. It's saying, yeah, it would be fun to get together again. I think that people don't even give that. People end a date and they're like, yeah, this was fun. Thank you so much. Are you giving any indication that you like this person enough to see them again? So learning some better skills, having a better profile, putting up things about yourself that are specific, not generic, which is what so many people do, which makes them disposable. But if you put things in your profile that make you stand out, you're going to have a better chance of making better connections. So I think there's a lot we can do. We can't control the entire dating scene, which is a mess, but you also can not only rely on online dating, like go to those restaurants, go to those meetup groups, get out, talk to people. Don't just go out and go to a restaurant with the book up in your face, like actually talk to people. Go on a bus and talk to the person next to you. I've had friends who've met their partners because they joined a hiking group and the person who they became friends with had a guy over who sat next to her on Thanksgiving and they ended up married. But he wasn't in the hiking group. It was because she had a new friend group. So, if you keep doing things the way you've always done them, you will have the same results. And if you open up the possibility of trying new things, getting out of your comfort zone, rising up to communicate better and do things more effectively, you'll have better results.
Sounds like we're going back to basics, honestly, because those things we used to do because we didn't have the phones. I look at our kids and my mom will complain, oh, they're not doing this there. I'm like, because mom, when I was growing up, I didn't have those things. I was forced to go outside and meet people at the playground. So we gave them social skills, which are now being taken away because of the devices that we're constantly on. And that also puts on the lack of communication, how we communicate. Can we even communicate without text? Because some people have that vibe via text, but then you meet them in person and they're dead. You're just like, who is this person? Is it ChatGPT that's answering all my texts? Like there's so much complexity, right? So you are right, and I stand with that. Get off the devices, go meet the people, get off texts, off the body language, eye contact, energy, even via FaceTime. You will know more about that person via FaceTime than via text. You don't have to physically meet them. Now we have those gadgets that we can actually meet them before we physically make that decision. Is it safe? Is it not? What's the vibe? So,
absolutely.
What is the one uncomfortable truth about love after 40 that people need to hear?
Uncomfortable truth is I think we are often harder on ourselves about aging and how we might be received by somebody we were attracted to, whether our bodies will be accepted, whether our faces will be accepted, whether we have to change something in order to be liked. I think that as we age, there's so much out there about Botox Botox in your 20s. This is not even in midlife. We're talking people have this need to be airbrushed and perfect on social media. So we're being fed all of these lies about what we should look like, what we should feel like. And I think what we don't realize is that everybody's going through this. So if you're worried about your body, the person you're dating is probably worried about theirs too. And we should be happy that we are alive to live this life and change how we approach aging. I just really feel like, people get sad about wrinkles and it's part of life. Oh, I'm having a birthday. You're lucky you're having a birthday. Like a lot of people don't get that. So yes, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it, but I go to the gym every day. I work out every single day and I've changed how I eat because my body isn't the same. So take care of yourself, but also realize that people are not scrutinizing you the way you're scrutinizing yourself. So please don't avoid dating because you're worried about somebody seeing you naked with this new body that you have, because there's lots of people out there who are going to think that you're beautiful and wonderful and handsome and you're just right the way you are.
Yeah. I think that's what our listeners need to hear too, because the pressure on women, especially after 40, hormonal changes, whether it's weight gain or, we're going through a lot. And sometimes you look at yourself and you're like, whose body is this? Whose mind is this? Just to know that the pressure isn't as intense as you put it on yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on that note, it was so nice speaking to you, having you on the show. One fire rapid question for you before we close off.
Yeah.
What is one dating trend you wish would disappear?
A dating trend that I wish would disappear is swiping culture. I just feel like we're judging people based on their looks alone, and it's not really fair. And I think that just people don't pay attention. They're just disposing of you. Swipe left, swipe left, swipe left. I suggest people swipe right, swipe right, swipe right. Because once you match, you can go in and analyze somebody's profile. But if you swipe right a lot, you're going to have more matches and you'll be more from a place of abundance, not scarcity. You know, you don't approach every single date as your future partner. I was speaking to a friend today who's really scared to speak in public. And so she was saying, I don't know what happens to me. Like, I feel like I have to be perfect. And I said, okay, if I told you the next date you're going on is going to be with your future husband, would you approach that date differently? She goes, well, I would try to be my authentic self. I said, yeah, would you spend 16 hours shopping for a dress and putting on your makeup and doing all these things so that you would be perfect for this person? Dating doesn't have to be all this pressure of, I hope they're the one. It's like, have fun, have experiences, get out of this whole, online dating culture, take back your control over it. And that way you're not going to be depressed going into dating and give up, which is what people do. They say it doesn't work. I'm going to give up. I'd rather be alone. And that's not true. I think a lot of people would not want to be alone if they met somebody who was great, but you can't meet them if you're not dating. So it's kind of a necessary evil, but make it fun.
Yeah. Get out there and have fun. So thank you so much, Sandy, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and having this conversation with us.
Thank you.
The goal was never to tell you what to think. It was to give you something worth talking about. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking the difficult questions. Till next time. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained valuable insights to elevate your life and business.
If you found value in our conversation, spread the love. Share this episode with family and friends, and let's grow this supportive community together.
And don't forget to like and follow us so we can reach more amazing people just like you.
Until next time, remember, let's not sugarcoat it. Keep it real, raw, and unfiltered.